Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Masterclass 5 Steps to Declutter Your Business and Reset for 2025. My name is Melissa Swink, and I'm the founder and CEO of Melissa Swink & Co. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for taking the time to work through this information today. I know that as a business owner or executive director or whatever your professional role is, there is no shortage of things that need to be done. And I want to honor you for taking the time to work on your business. There's so many times where we are stuck working in our companies that it's a pleasure to be able to take a step back and work on them and start to integrate and implement some things that are going to improve what we're doing in the future. And so I wanted to acknowledge you for taking the time to do that today. To share a little bit more about me, I started my virtual assistant business back in 2012, and I primarily worked on my own for about the first 6 years of owning my company. Prior to working as a VA, I have a corporate background in operations and logistics, and I was with a company for many years and survived a lot of layoffs through the housing crash of 2008 and the recession that followed. And ultimately, I found myself in a role that just was not a good fit for me. And so I knew that it was time for me to move on and do something different, but I wasn't quite sure what that was, to be perfectly honest with you. And so I started doing some process improvement consulting in my area for about 9 months. And during that time, I was introduced to the concept of a virtual assistant, which I can tell you back in 2012, the people that I was working with had no idea what that was. I was certainly not familiar with the concept, but I knew right away that it was the solution to so many of the challenges that the businesses that I was working with were facing. Because at the end of the day, as a consultant, they didn't need more advice. They certainly knew what they wanted to be doing, they knew what they should be doing. There just weren't enough hours in the day to do it. And or they just didn't have the skill sets required in order to do things. And on top of all of that, they couldn't necessarily justify hiring a part-time or full-time employee to do those things for them. So I opened my virtual assistant business and worked closely with my clients for many years and just grew to the point where I had reached my own capacity. I couldn't take on any more clients, any more projects. And at that point, I knew that I needed to make a change. When I started my business, I thought I wanted a small, manageable company where it was just me and my clients, but ultimately, as the business grew and also my daughter was born, I'll share a little bit more about me on the personal side in a second. But for the first time in my life, my time was no longer my own. And so it just got to a point where that business started to manage me and things needed to change. And so I made the decision to start building a team. And so today we are a team of about 22 and counting, including myself. And we have a variety of virtual assistants, copywriters, graphic designers, social media managers, bookkeepers and accountants, and so on the team who are there to support small businesses and nonprofits. And ultimately, by getting out of my own way and really learning how to scale my business, primarily in the way of team. Of course, there were systems and different structures and things involved with that. But ultimately, by doing that, I was able to grow a multi-six-figure company. So, a little bit about me personally. I am located in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I live with my daughter and our 2 cats. I enjoy cooking and reading. I founded a book club back in 2021, and we're still very active today. Looking forward to another fantastic year. I enjoy traveling, visiting Chicago, and just so glad to have you joining me today. I have met so many wonderful people through this business, and I'm excited to share with you really the steps that I follow on a regular basis on growing my own company and helping our own clients grow. And so, with that being said, just to give you a preview of what we're going to be talking about today before we dive in, we're going to take some time to reflect on 2024. We're going to look at where did you excel? What went well? And then what are some of the things that didn't go so well? Or where are some of your opportunities for 2025 and beyond? But most importantly, because if you're like me, you've probably spent a lot of time in your career attending conferences or lunch and learns or different workshops, courses, and things like that. And while I love learning and it really energizes me, if we're not actually implementing and putting some of these things into motion into our businesses or our organizations, then, at the end of the day, it was more of a feel-good thing, not necessarily something that gives us a return on our time or investment, depending on, what you're putting in. So I want to make sure that we also identify your action steps to set yourself up for success in 2025. Now, along with this training, I did create a worksheet for you, which will help you put these things into perspective from where you're sitting at your company, and also break these down into some action steps that you can take to begin to shift and change things for the better in the coming year. Now, I also wanted to make a mention here that while I frequently use the term business and business owner, because that is a lot of the work that we do with our clients, I also want to acknowledge that you might be an executive director of a nonprofit. So maybe the word for you is organization, or maybe you are an executive or professional working at a corporate company. You are able to modify this however you would like in order for this to make sense specifically for your company or your role with where you're at. I also wanted to mention that at the end of this training, I will have a link for you to book a short 15-minute call with me if you have questions on some of the things that I talk about today, or how to implement this with where you're at, anything like that, because I know that outside perspective can be really, really helpful, because we are just so close to our work that it's hard for us to see different ways of working or other opportunities for ourselves. And so this is not a sales call. This is just a time for you to book some time so we can talk through some of the things that may have come up for you during this training today. So, with all of that being said, before we jump into our first step to declutter your business and reset for 2025, we're just going to set some intentions. So really our goal here is to reflect on your results from 2024. And we're going to take a look at how can we do more of the things that worked well. And we're going to look at what are some of the things that need to shift or change in order to really make the way for growth where you want to grow in 2025. This is not going to be about dwelling on things that did not go well, maybe some disappointments, some failures, some goals that weren't being met. That's not what it's about today, but it's about taking an honest look to see how can we make some changes in order for 2025 to be our best year yet. Okay, so step number one is to assess your time spent by doing a calendar audit. And I'm going to share a little bit more about how I personally do calendar audits, because I realize that there are a lot of different ways that people will conduct calendar audits. So I will share mine, but also know that you may be able to tweak this for how it makes sense for you. But first things first, why are we starting here? Why are we starting with a calendar audit? You're like, there are so many more important things that I need to be doing with my time in terms of setting strategies and goals and performance metrics for the upcoming year. Why are we looking at my time? And the answer is because the way that you spend your time, you meaning me also, all of us spend our time, directly impacts our results. And so with that being said, I want to ask a couple of reflection questions here before we move on and take a look at how you actually spent your time. First things first, did you achieve the goals you set for yourself this year? Now, maybe you're like, yes, this year was a dynamic year for me. I really am happy with where I'm wrapping up the year, and I'm looking to do more in the upcoming year. That is fantastic. Congratulations. We still will be able to make some fine-tuning tweaks in order to continue this momentum into the coming year. Or maybe you're like, yes, some of the things that I wanted to accomplish this year happened, and some of the things did not. I think there's some room for improvement. Or maybe you're sitting there going, you know what? I did set some goals for myself, but I feel like life happened, or I was derailed because, this unexpected change happened, or, maybe I didn't see something coming, or maybe one door was closed and we're looking for the next door to open. Wherever you're at on the spectrum, on the quote unquote achievement continuum, if you will, just be honest with yourself where, how did things go in terms of goals? And the second reflection question here is, could your business or organization run without you for more than 2 days? And you might be wondering, what does that have to do with the way that I'm spending my time? And I'm asking this because it is an indication, if the answer is no, it is an indication that you're working in the business or organization more than you ought to be. So if you are doing the day-to-day running of your company or your organization, and this relies on you to run where you are at a point where you really couldn't go on vacation and completely unplug for a period of time, there are going to be some opportunities for you to fine-tune and tweak not only how you're spending your time, but also how things are set up on the structure on the back end in terms of operations that we'll talk about later on during the session today. So, with those questions honestly answered, now it's time to take a look at your calendar from 2024. And so, what I do when I do a calendar audit, I will start with the first week of January. And I'll turn my calendar to that week. And in a notebook or a journal or a blank sheet of paper, however you will, I make 3 sections. So, if I'm in a notebook, I make 3 pages. And at the top of each page, I put down it was worth the time, money, or energy, not worth the time, money, or energy, and then happiness and self-care, because there are things that aren't necessarily tied to a tangible result that just were really fun and made us happy. Like maybe there was a concert that you went to see over the summer that was fantastic. Or maybe you got together with some friends for a spa day. Or maybe you went on a week-long camping trip with the family. Okay, maybe that's not necessarily tied to some of your professional goals, but it was things that you really loved and enjoyed. I think that deserves a place on our calendar audit as well. And so what I do is I make those pages in my journal and I go through one by one, week by week, and just making notes of what are some of the things that I did that were worth it. Maybe there is a referral partnership or a networking group that you joined that you made a lot of friends, you made a lot of great connections, and you're receiving a lot of referrals, or maybe you're forming a collaboration for your business or organization that was well worth the time, money, and energy spent. Of course, that's going to go in that column. Or maybe there are plenty of things that you're looking at going, honestly, I invested in this program, or maybe there were meetings on my calendar that just really never materialized, or maybe there were sales calls booked on your calendar with people who were not quite the right clients for you, or they weren't quite ready to work with you, whatever that might be. And that honestly was not worth your time. This is not going to be reviewed by anybody else. This is private between you and your calendar and your own reflections. So go ahead and be brutally honest with you, honest with yourself here, because you may find that things that were once a good use of your time maybe aren't anymore. So with that being said, your action step here is going to be to block off some time to conduct a calendar audit and start really taking a look at the way that you spent your time and putting them into those categories. Now, a couple of strategies here as we're reflecting on our time. I highly recommend using time blocking to support your goals. So for me, that often means that first thing in the morning, I am blocking time to take a look at where are our financials at? What sales calls do I have coming up for the week? Do I need to follow up with people? Do I need to do some outreach? Maybe my pipeline is getting a little bit empty. Those might be things that I am blocking time off for earlier in the day so that I get them done before, the inevitable fires need to be put out. Maybe you're blocking time for yourself each day to make sure that you get a walk in so that you can maintain your energy and you get some fresh air and clear your mind for the day ahead, or even at lunchtime. So you have that break so you're energized for the afternoon. There are great ways to use time blocking within your calendar to set yourself up for success so that you don't have a wide open day where anything goes. Also, you can consider using a tool like Tackle to monitor your time and impact. Now, I have a podcast called Make Space for More. I recently spoke with Mika Sajendik, who is a co-founder of Tackle, and Tackle, in a nutshell, is a Google Calendar add-on that can help you determine and categorize how you're spending your time so that a report is automatically generated as often as you would like to tell you how much time am I spending working on my goals or key performance metrics for my company versus how much time is working in the business and doing client deliverables or just business management things or leading your team, things like that. Personal time that is being used during the day. You're able to get a report on that automatically. And so if you really love to get into the weeds of the analysis, that might be a really great tool for you to implement in 2025. Also, recommend consolidating availability for appointments. So I used to try and keep my calendar as open as possible because I wanted people to meet with me at times that were convenient for them. I wanted to be accommodating. But what was happening, and my business coach pointed this out when she kind of did a calendar audit, if you will, on what I was doing. She was like, your day is very patchy, where you have a meeting here, and then you have 30 minutes, and then you have another meeting, and then you have an hour, and you have another meeting. And it's hard to get anything accomplished during these little pockets of your time, and your brain is constantly switching back and forth. So now I have consolidated where I have a couple of hours open, say on a Tuesday morning or on a Wednesday afternoon, just to give you examples where those are open for appointments so that I can be heads down and focused in doing work on the times that I am not open and available for appointments. Also, just wanted to mention here when we talk about time management, email can be the most distracting part of your day and can easily keep you in reactive mode. And so I highly recommend scheduling times to check your email so that you're not living in your inbox and letting that determine the course and direction of your day. Now, I love to use a tool called Boomerang that will pause my inbox throughout the day. So I might go in the morning and just do a quick triage and make sure that nobody is waiting on me in order to take the next action step that they need to take in their day. So I go through and figure out if there's any immediate questions that need to be answered or if anything urgent has come up. And then I just pause my inbox so that I'm not being distracted by other things that are coming in. Just wanted to mention that in case that is helpful for you and where you are at as well. Okay. Step number 2 is to release what's no longer aligned for you and your business or organization. So right here, we're going to take a moment and take a deep breath and be honest with yourself. Are there things that you need to let go of in order to set yourself up for success and growth in 2025? So let's take a look at what some of those things might be. So first things first, revenue streams. Just to share a client story with you, I had lunch with one of our clients a couple of months ago, and she was sharing with me that there was a particular area of her business that was experiencing some turnover in terms of her team. And so she was getting ready to hire a pretty substantial team member in order to run this division of her company. And she decided to take a pause and do a little bit of analysis before moving forward with this. And what she found was that this particular area of her business really was not bringing in the revenue and the profitability that she would like it to. And she found that the other area of her business, which was much easier to run, was bringing in a lot more of the revenue and ultimately was more profitable than this other one. And so what she decided to do was not hire for this particular area of her business that was just not generating the profitability that she was hoping for, and decided to focus her energy and her team's time on growing the other part of the company. Now, she did not shut down that revenue stream completely, but what she did was she no longer will be marketing that. She will no longer be actively growing that side of the business. If she receives some referrals or she has clients inquiring about those services, great, she will service them. But it's not something that she's going to be pouring her time, energy, money into in 2025 to grow. So, on a similar note to revenue streams, maybe there are products or services that you no longer want to offer in 2025. There might be things that just are not as popular as others. Say, if you're a product based company where maybe there are certain product lines or categories that just are not as popular, and those are things that just need to be decluttered and removed from your offerings in the coming year to make room for more of the things that your customers want. Or maybe if you're a service-based provider, maybe there is a service that is just very tedious and time-consuming to deliver, and it's just not something that you want to pour your energy into in the coming year. Also, when we take a look at what needs to be released in 2025, maybe there are some non-ideal clients or team member that you're working with that just need to, maybe we just need to part ways with. And there are ways to do that. I will share a little bit more of that in just a moment. Groups or collaborations. So, one example of this is I have a friend who was in a networking group for many, many years. They met every week, and she did meet a lot of wonderful people in this group. She did receive a lot of referrals over the years and things. But over time, as her business continued to just grow and evolve and expand, she found that she was just no longer relating to the people in her group, or maybe her clients moving forward, maybe her clientele had changed a little bit and they just weren't necessarily in alignment with a lot of the referrals that she was receiving from the group. So she decided not to renew her membership in that particular networking group. So yes, while she was so grateful and honored the time that she was in there, it was time for her to move on. And so you might have some groups that you're a part of, or maybe some collaborative relationships that just are no longer a fit, and that's okay. Other commitments that are no longer aligned, you can probably figure that out, especially if you take a look back at your calendar audit and take a look at the things that just were not worth your time, your money, your energy in 2024. What are some of those things that maybe need to take a step back from in 2025? So I realized that this is hard. And I realized that there might be some things coming to mind right now that all of a sudden, your gut will say, you know what, that person on my team, they were wonderful, but they are just not quite the right fit for where I'm headed in the coming year. Or I know that I have this referral partnership, but I would like to be focusing on this other area of my business instead in the coming year. I think that I need to take a step back from it. It is not uncommon for your gut to speak to you on these things and then have your brain immediately shut it down and give you some quote unquote logical reason why you have to make this work. So I just want to share with you that it is perfectly normal to have this feeling of divide of, I know this is the direction why I want to go, and then have your mind try to talk you out of it. So a couple of strategies here when we're looking at things that need to be released in order for us to grow and expand in 2025. If you're struggling here with figuring out, what do I need to release? Caller ID gut check is something that I call it. And so especially when we're looking at the types of people that we're collaborating with and working with, if you see that person's name pop up on your phone or in your email, what is your reaction? If your reaction is, what do they want now? Or send it to voicemail, or I'll respond to them later, they might not be the ideal fit for you to be spending your time with. Another strategy here in terms of moving on and releasing some of the things that we want to let go of in 2025, sometimes that can be as simple as not promoting what you don't want to do. So if you are a service-based company and you find, you know what, I really love for example, social media work that we're doing, and I'm just really not enjoying building and maintaining websites anymore, maybe it's as simple as removing web design from your offerings. Don't advertise them anymore. And sure, maybe you'll receive a referral here or there from somebody else who hired you to do that type of work, and you can take that on a case by case basis. But maybe the first step to no longer doing web design in this example is to remove it from your website, remove it from your marketing materials. Don't talk about it anymore. And, continue on from there. Now, sometimes when we're talking about things to release or maybe people or things that are just not fitting into our lives when where we're at and where we're headed, maybe it's a matter of reestablishing boundaries as needed. Maybe it is using some time blocking and no longer accepting meetings that are before a certain time of day. Or maybe it's I no longer want to conduct business through text message and be available 24/7. Maybe I am going to direct my clients to converse with me in another way. Maybe we're going to do email, or we're going to do Slack, or we're going to find some other communication channel where it's less stressful and requires me to be less available on demand. Now, the last note that I wanted to share with you here when it comes to releasing things that are no longer aligned for the coming year is it is absolutely possible for you to create peaceful transitions and not burn any bridges on your way out. Certainly honor contracts that are in place. Give proper notice. If there's a client that you no longer would like to work with in the coming year, or maybe there's a team member that did a great job for you, and and when times were great, and now you're finding that you're going in a different direction, or maybe the quality of their work is slipping because they have other things going on. Please honor those contracts. Give proper notice. If you feel like it would be genuine and heartfelt, feel free to write them a recommendation or give them a testimonial. Make sure if this is a client that you are offloading, offer to help them find their next service provider so they're not left hanging with nowhere to go. There are definitely ways that you can transition clients or team members that are no longer aligned in a way that is respectful and everybody can feel good about in the long term. Okay. Step number 3 is to make your business easier to run. So now we've taken a look at how we're spending our time, what is worth it, what is not worth it, where we want to be focusing on, how we want to be structuring our time. We have determined what are some of the things that are just no longer going to be aligned for us in 2025, and how are we going to release those items. Now let's take a look at kind of the fun side of things. Let's make this whole thing easier so that it's less time consuming. And why do I skip to this after releasing when I'm going to be talking about building a team, right? Especially with the nature of the work that I do in my virtual assistant business. And the reason is it is far more cost effective to automate a process, or at least make it much more efficient and streamlined, than it is to pay someone to do manual work for you. So as we are looking at growing and scaling your business or organization in the coming year, you have to have solid processes and systems in place to support it. So a great place to start here is to look at the repeatable processes that you're doing on a regular basis. Maybe it's every day, maybe it's weekly, once a month, quarterly, or even yearly. So to give you some core examples here of some key areas that I often see, not only in my business, but in our clients' businesses, what is a good candidate for something that can be streamlined or automated? So when we're looking at repeatable processes, certainly sales, right? We have people, looking at doing business with us on a regular basis if you're doing your marketing consistently, right? So what does that sales process look like? Because we're often having similar types of conversations with people. Similarly, client journey or onboarding. When you have a new customer coming on board and wants to be working with you, What does that process look like? What information do you need? What is the process through working with you? Similarly, if you are actively growing your team or you're regularly onboarding new employees, what does that process look like? Billing and accounting, certainly something that happens on a regular basis. So when you make this list of the repetitive tasks that you do in these key areas of the business, what are some things that could be automated? So I'll give you a couple of examples here. These are simple examples, but certainly feel free to fine tune and tweak these based on where you're at within your role at your company or organization. So for sales, maybe it is involving an intake form. Maybe we send an intake form to a potential client who wants to work with us. And before we get into the conversation, we can gather a little bit more information so that we are coming in prepared for that call. And we're not asking them questions that they could have been filling out ahead of time. And we can tailor and customize that conversation to meet the needs based on where they're at. So maybe this looks like, I know for us, we use a system called Calendly for clients to book consultations with us. And there are some simple questions that we ask when a potential client is scheduling a sales consultation. And we try to make this as simple as we can and do as much, you know, multiple choice or checkbox type questions, if you will, so that they don't have to think too hard about answering these. If I click on a form and there's lots of, long-winded answer boxes, my brain just starts to shut down. So I try to make it really, really easy for potential clients to share with me, what about their company? How big is their team? What are some things they're looking for help with? What are some challenges? And having those pre-filled in ahead of time for them to choose from saves them a lot of time, and it gives me a much better idea going in of how I want to address that in the conversation. So client onboarding. I know the owner of another virtual assistant services company. She and I have a very different clientele, a very different business model, but she was sharing with me that she has a automatic email drip for new clients that are coming on board with working with her. And that just helps teach them a little bit more about how to delegate and how all of this works. What are some of if they have questions, who do they go to? Like, how does the billing work? Like, how do they keep track of their time? All of those things, the conversations and the questions that she frequently asks for new clients coming on board, she has created an email drip to educate them in the beginning of working together of, how everything goes. Another example here with team onboarding. Maybe it's as simple as having a checklist created so that you make sure that every new team member coming into your company receives the same amount of training. Maybe, it's as simple as we set up an email address for them. We give them access to the Google Drive folders that they need. They need access to these systems with these permissions. We need these forms filled out. All of these things, it can be as simple as a checklist just to make sure that, everything is consistent. And then also creating training videos that they can review ahead of time. So again, we're not having the same conversations over and over and over every time a new team member begins working with us. Another final example here on the systems and automation side of things is billing. So sometimes it is a matter of simply upgrading a software we're currently using in order to have more capabilities and thus save time. So I was using QuickBooks for many, many years, and we bill our clients twice a month, depending on when they started working with us. So client billing is either on the 1st or the 15th, and we send out invoices about 5 days prior before those billing cycles renew. And so what I would do is I would block off some time, maybe like 30 minutes. I'm not talking a lot of time because our clients, for the most part, are on retainer. And I would go through and create all the invoices. And it's literally duplicating the previous month's invoice, maybe updating the month and the year and sending that out to them. And then 5 days later, on the payment due date, I would go in and just click process payments because they had payment methods on file. And I was doing this, and yes, maybe it took a total of about 2 hours a month. However, when I upgraded my QuickBooks by $25, so stepped up into the next tier, the invoices were automatically created and sent for me, and payments were automatically processed on the due date. I no longer had to touch any of it. And so for $25 a month, that saved me a lot of manual time. So I encourage you to consider, what is one type of software that you could implement or upgrade in order to save you some extra manual steps? Or another way to look at this is to consider, are there any processes or are there any workflows or repeatable processes in your business that feel clunky or are mistake prone, and that steps get missed or there's usually confusion? These are all really good candidates to consider for systematizing, streamlining, and even automating to make your business easier to run. Okay, a few more strategies here. So, as I've mentioned, make a list of the repeatable processes you do on a regular basis. This is really going to help you identify some areas that you can really automate and streamline and make easier moving forward. The less decision making, the better. So I also recommend implementing or upgrading software to save time and manual work, just like the example that I gave you with my own QuickBooks. I love sharing some of the stories that I have behind the scenes, and certainly, work with many clients on these same things as well. Another billing example, as long as I'm kind of on this tangent here, I talked with a potential client who is still creating his invoices in Microsoft Word or, a Google Doc, and saving them as a PDF and emailing them to his clients. And then his clients are sending him manual checks in the mail. And he does a mobile deposit in his banking account, but talk about a manual process. And I would imagine that his customers are like, dude, it's 2024. Can't we pay you electronically? I mean, personally, I have business checks. I don't have personal checks anymore. It just kind of cracks me up a little bit. So think about these things. What are some things that even you might be experiencing in your personal life where you're like, ooh, that was really slick. That was really easy. How can I implement something like that into my own company? There's ideas everywhere. As I mentioned, also look at areas that are causing you frustration or often have things slip through the cracks. Maybe there's a lot of confusion with clients. We're like, oh, I thought it was going to be like this. Or, maybe you have team members that are consistently making mistakes when it comes to this one thing. That is something that I highly recommend taking a look at and doing a deeper dive into, and really outlining that process so everybody's clear on the steps and get some buy-in and input in terms of how can we make this easier. Sometimes when we talk about systematizing, streamlining, and processes, it is so much easier to get the perspective and input from other people. And this is something that you can easily do with your team or a business coach. Or again, I would love to hop on a quick call with you if you're like, hey, my team and I are really struggling with this. What do you think? I'm happy to share whatever help that I can on this. Okay. Step number 4, if it can't be eliminated, okay, we're talking about the things that we're going to release in the coming year, or we can't automate it, we're going to look at delegating it. So why do we bring this up? Because again, as I referenced in the beginning of this training, all the non-income producing work that we do adds up and dilutes our results. Now, if you're listening to this and you're saying, you know what, I'm not in sales in my role in the company, take a look at what are the key performance indicators for you in your organization or your role. What are the most important things that you need to be doing in your role? And how can you do more of that? And how can you eliminate the distractions and the busy work that prevent you from doing those things to the max? So, something to consider here. How much time each week do you spend on things like reading, filing, responding to emails, coordinating meetings and sending follow-ups, like hey, so-and-so, I'm free on Wednesday at 10 a.m. And that person says, 10 a.m. doesn't work for me on Wednesday. What about 3 p.m. on Thursday? And round it goes. Or then, the email conversation goes cold, and then we got to resurrect it a few days later or a few weeks later. It's a lot. Writing marketing content, posting on social media, as we talked about, onboarding new clients or team members, where, it can be a lot to get something up and running and getting somebody acclimated to working with you. It takes a lot, and it's probably a conversation that you're having, which is very, very similar over and over and over. And are there opportunities to get help from others on some of those things? Invoicing, following up on client payments. Like I said, even if you automate payments, inevitably each month there are payments that don't go through. Maybe somebody's credit card expired, or maybe their credit card got hacked and we need to track down the new number in order to get their account updated. There's all this manual work. Paying vendors and bills, that's another one. Outreach to potential clients or collaborators, where maybe you have a list of people that you want to stay in front of, and how are you engaging with them on a regular basis? Responding to inquiries that come in through your website, for example, or even answering team questions. I know as my team grew, I found that while I was doing less client-facing work and doing less client deliverables, I was answering a lot of questions. And so for me, I needed to get some help from other team members. I established a team managers called our senior VAs to help answer questions from other VAs coming in, because number one, they were much closer to the clients and the team members who were asking, and it also freed up some of my time and energy in order to do more of the business development type of work that I needed to do. Miscellaneous to-dos that inevitably pop up. So I highly recommend making a list of the manual / busy work that you do on a regular basis. Now, these are just some examples that we see a lot, not only in our own lives, my life, my team's lives, in our clients' lives as well. So add that time up and see how much time is taking away from the more impactful work that you could be doing. My guess is it's usually at best about 50%, and sometimes it's even more than that. So with that being said, I'm going to take just a brief pause for a moment and ask you, have you ever wondered what your time is worth? And I'll give you a hint that it is not the average rate that you're earning right now. So maybe you're like, oh gosh, I don't know. I pay myself, X dollars per month if you're a business owner. Or maybe you're in a role where you're like, well, this is my salary. So, I guess, divide that up by however much I work every week. That's what my time is worth. That's actually not quite accurate when you're looking at return on investment. So I'm going to walk you through an exercise that will help you get a better idea of what your time is worth. Now, I also want to mention that depending on your business or your organization and the type of work that you do, this might not be a perfect formula for figuring this out. And so again, if you have questions about how to apply this to your situation, or maybe you're like, you know what, I hate math, I want somebody else to do it for me, feel free to book that 15-minute call with me, and I'm happy to answer questions here. So I'm going to walk you through some examples of how you can calculate what your time is worth. And so you want to ask yourself, how many hours do you spend each week on non-revenue generating activities? Because again, that really adds up and it's really important. And we also need to consider here, if you were to use that time for sales or revenue generating activities or impactful work instead, how much more could you, how much greater results could you achieve? How many new clients could you onboard, or products could you sell, or fundraisers could you secure, whatever that might mean for you and your role? We also want to take a look at here what factors in what is the average price of your product or service. So maybe you're a service-based company. Maybe you say are a photographer. Let's use the photography example. What is the average price of your package? So with that being said, let's figure out the cost of delegating. How many hours, we want to look at, first of all, how many hours saved per week. So let's say you added up and said, you know what, I work 40 hours a week and about, let's say 22 of those hours, so a little bit more than half, are spent on this busy work that you're talking about, Melissa. And let's say that you could hire an assistant for, let's say, 25 hours, $25 an hour in order to take over that work. And let's say you paid them, all year round. So in this example, 22 hours per week times $25 an hour means that you're paying them $550 a week times 52 weeks in a year. That's approximately $28,600 per year to delegate those tasks. So to hire a part-time assistant, simple math. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, I don't have $28,000 to hire a personal assistant or an executive assistant. How is that going to, how am I even going to make that happen? Let's take a look at your opportunity cost here. So let's say you saved 22 hours per week, and instead you spent that time doing sales and marketing and landed, let's say, an extra 5 new clients. Let's say you were able to, if you're a photographer, you were able to do 5 more photo shoots per month because you're saving all of that time by hiring a part-time assistant. So if we're onboarding 5 new clients a month, or we're doing 5 extra photo shoots a month, and let's say the average photo shoot is about $1,500 for that package. So that would result in an additional $7,500 of revenue per month times 12 months per year. That would be an additional $90,000 per year in new sales. And so when you take a look at this, your return on investment would be more than 3 times because you hired that personal assistant or that part-time assistant to handle that busy work for you. So I want to be clear that hiring team should be giving you a return on investment. Okay, a few strategies here when it comes to determining what to delegate and, getting started with building a team or expanding the work that you're doing with your team. First of all, you want to understand what your quote unquote needle movers are. So again, these are the things that really contribute to the bottom line of your company. These are the things that are your key performance indicators, the impactful work that you're doing. It may be a little bit different depending on your role and what type of company and business that you're in, but you need to understand what those things are. So, and that also ties back to the goals that you have for 2025. Do you have a revenue goal or do you have a fundraising goal? What does that look like? And the things that ultimately contribute to bringing in more sales or bringing in more sponsorships or funds are your needle movers. Also, highly encourage you to hire before you're ready, and you can start small. Maybe you're taking a look at the list of busy work that I provided for you as an example in this workshop today, and you're like, you know what? I spend a ridiculous amount of time on posting on social media. I never know what to say. It takes me forever to write a clever caption. And then I have to go onto Canva and I have to make myself a graphic. Maybe you're like, you know what? I need to be visible. I need to be visible. I need my company to have a consistent online presence. I am going to outsource my social media and I'm going to start with 1 or 2 posts a week. Great. That is a great place to start. And also encourage you to not stop there. So let's get a social media company hired in order to take this off your plate. And you use that time to continue growing and scaling. And then take a look at the next thing. What else? I need help with my inbox. It's out of control. How can I hire an assistant to check my inbox, say 30 minutes a day, and help me keep that under control? Make sure that I'm responding to people that I need to respond to, help me stay organized, etc. So we just want to continue growing from there. And I highly recommend, because for me, surprisingly, believe it or not, delegation does not come natural. I'm one of those people that, in school, if we were on a group project and I didn't trust that other people on the team were going to get it done, or they were not going to do as good of a job as I would have, and then ultimately my grade would suffer, I would just take on much more than my fair share and just get it done. Some of you might be laughing that you recognize yourself in that. Or maybe you're laughing at this because you're like, yeah, you know what? I remember being paired up with those kids who are very type A and straight A students, and they would do the bulk of the work for me. And it was fantastic. I'm saying that humorously, but you get the idea. If delegation is not something that comes natural to you, like it does not to me, I highly recommend frequently reviewing your to-do list with other people and getting their help. So maybe you have a team and you go through at the beginning of each week, here's everything on my plate. Give them an opportunity to say, oh, I could help you with this. Or how about I draft that proposal and then you can make the final edits before sending it to the client. You get the idea. It's hard to delegate. It can be hard to determine what to delegate. Whereas if you get the outside perspective of somebody else and they can make suggestions on what to delegate, that makes things so much easier. Believe it or not, you do not have to have things planned out and perfectly wrapped up on a silver platter in order to hand off to them in order to get some support in your company. Okay. Last step here. We want to take all of the things that we talked about, all those action items that you've written down, and we want to take the next step forward, which is to block time on your calendar and put these things into motion for 2025. Again, we don't want to just absorb this information and move on with our day. And then 6 months go by and we still haven't made the changes that we know that we need to make, or we forget all about this entirely. We want to make sure that you spending your time today has actually made an impact on the coming year. And so what we're going to do now as our final action step is block a 30-minute time slot on your calendar for each of the action items in the areas we talked about today. Now, you might be wondering, how am I going to complete this in 30 minutes? Maybe you're not. Maybe some of the things that you identified here are going to take some time. Maybe it's, yes, I want to hire a social media manager, to continue on with that example. Of course, it's going to take you more than 30 minutes to find and hire the right social media manager for your company. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are taking action steps forward in these directions, because one action step leads to another and so on. And so we want to be building momentum here. That's the point. And so we want to block off 4 30-minute time slots to dive deeper into your calendar audit, because we want to be aligning the way that you spend your time based on your goals and what you need to accomplish in your company or organization in 2025. We also want to consider, the people or the products or the services that are no longer a fit for us, and what does that transition look like? We want to make your business or organization easier to run and less labor intensive. So we want to take a look at, are there processes that we can just automate by increasing the software support that we have? Maybe there is a process in our business that feels really clunky and I need to review it with my team and take a look at opportunities for us to make everything just so much easier moving forward. And then lastly, we want to delegate non-revenue generating tasks. What are some of the things that you just need to get off your plate in the coming year? Okay, a few final strategies to offer you before I give you an opportunity to book some time with me to get your questions answered or just to get some outside perspective. So we want to work on your business earlier in the day before distractions pop up. Just like the concept, if you exercise regularly, if I wait till the end of the day to get my workout in, inevitably something else happens, or I lose momentum, or I start to get, tired and fatigued from the day and don't feel like it. Get it done early in the day. You won't regret it. Get others involved for accountability and momentum. Like I said, it's so much easier. I get so much more accomplished and done when I involve my team in the work that I'm doing. So I do like to meet regularly with my executive assistant, certainly with my senior VA management team. I meet with my marketing team on a regular basis, because if it was up to me to get all of these things done in my business or to implement something new, it would just take me forever. And it's so much easier to get the expertise from other people who can take your idea, your concept, and just run with it under, your approval and direction, obviously. And also just want to make sure that you are honoring your commitments to yourself and your business or organization for the coming year. If you have a goal that you've set for yourself and it's something that you truly want to accomplish, then honor that commitment and don't let other things get in the way or derail your efforts there. Okay. So, as I've mentioned, we covered a lot in today's training. And it can be really hard sometimes to take a look at opportunities to do things differently in our work because we are just so close to it. Or maybe you have specific questions on, hey, I'm not sure how much my time is worth. Or, hey, I'm struggling with this calendar audit thing. Here's how, I think that it makes sense to do it based on my role and my responsibilities. Not a problem. I have a link here where you can book a 15-minute call with me just to go through maybe some of the action steps that you've come up with today or to get some outside help on the things that you want to implement in 2025. This is not a sales call. It is just to get outside perspective. Of course, if you and I are chatting and you want to learn more about the services that my team and I have to offer, we would book a separate call to have a separate conversation another time. Thank you so much for joining me for today's masterclass, 5 steps to declutter your business and reset for 2025. I really appreciate and honor you for taking this time to work on yourself and on your business. I would love to stay in touch with you. I'm active on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I'm also sharing my email address and my website with you as well if you'd like to check out any of the resources that I have online or would like to learn more about me and my company. Also wanted to mention that I am the host of the Make Space for More podcast. You can get that anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, you name it. It is on there. You'll see links on my website as well. Make Space for More is about growing your business beyond you in a way that is authentic and aligned. And so I'd love to share more tips and tools and strategies just like this with my listeners on there. So thank you so much again for your time today. I look forward to connecting with you and answering your questions after today's call. And I hope that you have a wonderful 2025. Take care.